Big new developments tonight in the Hunter Biden investigation. The Washington Post reporting that federal agents now believe there is a chargeable case against the president's son. A few hours ago, citing sources familiar with the case, the Post reported that federal agents believe they have enough evidence to charge Hunter Biden with tax crimes and with making a false statement related to a gun purchase. The question now becomes whether charges will actually be brought. We'll get to that in a moment. But let's start with the potential gun charge, which is certainly the lesser of the two. In 2018, Hunter Biden purchased a handgun. And as part of the process, he, as most gun buyers are required to do, filled out a form which asked if he is, quote, an unlawful user of or addicted to marijuana or any depressant, stimulant, narcotic, drug, or any other controlled substance. He responded no. Yet in his 2021 memoir, the president's son admitted to being in the throes of a crack addiction at the time, meaning that he would have lied by answering no on his gun purchase paperwork. But it's rare for someone to be cited for that falsification of the form, and even rarer for them to be actually criminally charged. We went and looked. The DOJ received 478 referrals nationwide for lying on the gun forms during the entire fiscal year in which Hunter Biden bought the gun. It filed charges in 298 of those cases, about 60% of the time. But this one may be clearer than those other cases. As for the tax allegations, the FBI has reportedly been looking into whether Hunter Biden owes taxes on income from controversial work, serving on the board of a Ukrainian energy company. The feds have subpoenaed his tax records going back to 2014. This comes on the heels of an hour-long Tucker Carlson interview with Hunter's former business partner, Tony Bobulinski, who has made a variety of explosive claims, including that the president's son bilked him out of millions of dollars in a deal with a Chinese energy company. And the FBI helped cover it up to protect Joe Biden ahead of the 2020 election. But rather than doing a victory lap, Fox News, which has been calling for Hunter to be investigated for years, appears frustrated that there isn't more.
This is not a story about Hunter Biden. This involves the entire Biden family and, most importantly, the President of the United States.
Except there is no credible evidence of any criminal activity by Joe Biden, so I don't even know what he's talking about. Yes, Tony Bobulinski has alleged that Joe Biden, as a private citizen, was more involved in Hunter's business dealings than he's let on. Whether that's true or not, that's not criminal, unless, of course, you listen to Fox News.
Because a fair examination of the evidence, and the evidence is huge, may show that Joe Biden committed treasonous acts for money. He may have sold us out to the communist Chinese for cash. And as men and women serve our country overseas and risk everything to protect the security of this great nation, we owe it to them to get to the truth.
May show, except even Bobulinski didn't really claim any of that. By the way, after our segment evaluating Tucker's interview with Bobulinski last night, we invited him to come on the program to sit here and talk to me about these issues. We are still waiting to hear back. As to what actually happens next in the Hunter Biden investigation, that's up to the U.S. Attorney in Delaware, David Weiss, who was appointed by President Trump, was kept on by Attorney General Merrick Garland, who's made clear that this decision is all up to Weiss, and the DOJ will not exert any pressure on the Delaware attorney. So joining us now is Jaytown, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama under President Trump. Thanks so much for coming on the show. Appreciate it. All right, so how much pressure do you think Weiss is under here now to bring charges?
So I think the real pressure on David Weiss, who's a friend of mine and who's a good guy, and he's a straight shooter, he's a career prosecutor. I would say really the pressure is on him to decline prosecution. The declination really is the path of least resistance. Now, I get that there's going to be this sort of vitriol from the right, and you just played some really good clips of people who never went to law school, aren't career prosecutors, and may have done something, doesn't prove anything beyond a reasonable doubt. Jesse Waters might want to maybe look that up. But at the same time, I think it's easier to just decline the case. Delaware's a small district. They got maybe 24 assistant U.S. attorneys. By comparison, the Southern District of New York has like 250. So this is going to, Hunter Biden's not going to have a public defender. He's going to have a tremendous defense team with lots of resources and the full weight of whatever they can bring to bear. the easy way out here, or the path of least resistance, is declination.
Really?
But I don't think David. Go ahead.
I don't agree. I think the path of least resistance, if you've got a team of agents who are working on the case who believe there should be charges filed, I would think that the path of least resistance would be to go ahead and file those charges.
Well, and I understand that logic, but you still have to prove it in court. It still has to be a case that you would typically bring. If this was Hunter Jones, I wouldn't be on TV with you tonight, Dan, talking about that case. And so because it's Hunter Biden,
right.
And there is sort of this institutional reluctance to politicize prosecutions. I get that there's some cases we've talked about recently where, maybe that defies what I just said. But it's, I know, important to David Weiss to use his resources wisely and to prosecute Hunter Biden for a crime that he believes should be proven in court beyond a reasonable doubt.
And it seems to me, Jay, that if you have this leak now, remember there was a leak this summer, which sort of almost got us to this point. Now this leak is even more definitive about the agents believing there was criminality. That sure sounds to me like you've got people who are intentionally leaking this to put pressure on the prosecutor there to file the charges.
Well, that very well could be. The leak was to the Washington Post, though, and given the sort of the leanings of WAPO, I would maybe counter that with, Dan, you could be right, but also because it went to the Washington Post and not to the Federalist or Mediaite or sort of a right-leaning publication, that perhaps they're trying to minimize what the potential charges could be. Failure to file, and he's already made good on his tax debts. This was an addict saying he wasn't an addict. That shouldn't blow anyone's hair back. That could also be sort of the angle of this. And I bet you anything that going forward, whenever we see David Weiss's name in print, he is going to be referred to as the Trump-appointed Delaware United States Attorney and not just the U.S. Attorney.
Quick question. Do you think of Mediaite as a right-leaning publication?
They certainly have plenty of folks that lean to the right.
You know I own it,
you disagree,
right?
Dan?
You know I own it.
Huh?
You know I own the site.
I do know you own it.
Okay, all right. I just was wondering, like you're sort of throwing it out there like it's, like attacking Mediaite. And I'm like, does he know that I founded this? Anyway, Jaytown, thank you.
I would never, Dan. I would never attack anything you do. Ever.
Jaytown, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.